The Queen is a terrible harassment unit, D tier. So a good harassment unit needs two things. Number one, high damage output to quickly kill a lot of workers. And number two, mobility to get close to the enemy workers. And the Queen has none of this. It is a low DPS unit. It is very slow. It's the opposite of a good harassment unit, D tier. Then we have the Zergling. I'll put it into S tier. Number one, it is super fast, the fastest ground unit in the game. Lings also have very high damage output, so for how cheap the Ling is, it has the highest DPS of all units in the game. And the Ling is also very small, so a small hole in the enemy wall is enough for the Ling to slip through and flood the enemy base. Maybe the best harassment unit in the game. It's an S tier. Next we have the Roach, and the Roach is a weak one, I would say. I would probably put it into C tier because the Roach has a pretty low damage output. It's just not good at killing a lot of workers quickly. But I also think the Roach can become a decent harassment unit if you have Burrow and Tunneling Claws upgrade. With these upgrades, the Roach can move underground into the enemy base and harass a little bit. So maybe I should put it into B tier, but not higher because, yeah, the damage output is pretty low. The Ravager is also very weak at harassing. So number one, again, it doesn't have a high damage output for how much it costs. It's not the fastest unit and is also a very big and clunky unit. So it's very hard to get to the enemy mineral line with the Ravager. And anyway, it deals low damage, D. Next we have the Baneling. And I think this is again a very good harassment unit. I would put it somewhere between A and S. I think it is an S tier because, yeah, it is a little bit slower than the Zergling and it doesn't have this mobility of the Zergling, but it has a super high damage output. It has bonus damage to light units and every worker in the game is light, and it also has a very nice splash damage unit. So, I mean, it's not as good as just running into the enemy base. Sometimes you will have to use a Baneling drop or a Nidus to get in the enemy mineral line. But once the Baneling is there, it just explodes and kills 10, 20 workers at the same time. I think it is an S tier. And next we have the Hydralisk. The Hydralisk is a mediocre harassment unit because, yeah, the Hydralisk's attack is pretty good. It attacks very quickly and it has a high damage output, so it is very good at quickly killing a high amount of workers, but it doesn't have any mobility advantage. So again, Hydralisk drop is a nice harassment tool, or Hydralisk Nidus also, but you usually can't just walk with Hydralisks into the enemy base as you can do with Zerglings, but they're still good at harassing expansions and they're okay. And next we have the Mutalisk. I think the Mutalisk is a good one. I would put it into A tier because the Mutalisk's mobility is very good. So mobility wise, that's clearly an S tier. It is a flying unit with an anti-ground attack and it is very quick. But the damage output of the Muta is just pretty lackluster. So for example, to one-shot an enemy worker, you need 5 Mutalisks because each Muta deals 9 damage. And even if you have 5 Mutalisks, you still need to kill the enemy workers one by one. And that's of course a way lower damage output than like a bunch of Zerglings or Banelings. So mobility wise S tier, but the damage output is not impressive, but it's still good, A tier. Corruptor, I would say, is not a good one. I would say C tier. Number one, it doesn't have an anti-ground attack and the caustic spray ability can only be used on buildings. But I mean, it's not a harassment unit because to actually get rid of an enemy building with corruptors, you need a high amount of corruptors, 10. So that's not a harassment style of play. But yeah, getting rid of the enemy main building can be a strong move, so they're not completely useless. And next we have the Infestor. That's a spellcaster unit. I don't think its spells are useful for harassment, so Neural Parasite is not useful. The Fungal Growth, okay, Fungal Growth can maybe in theory be good because it is a splash damage spell, but then again, you need 2 fungal growths, consecutive ones, to kill an enemy worker because it deals 25 damage. and the Infestor is just very slow and very fragile unit. It's very unlikely to get an Infestor into the enemy base without losing the Infestor. I think it's a D tier. The Lurker is, I think, a very good one, or not an extremely good one, but good. I will put it into A tier, because the Lurker, number one, it has splash damage, very strong against workers. It has a good range. It doesn't need to come super close to the enemy mineral line to be able to hit the enemy workers. And of course, it is invisible. And this is extremely annoying. Having a lurker in the enemy base is a nightmare for the enemy. But again, it doesn't have the best mobility. It's pretty clunky. So the only option to get a lurker in the enemy base to harass is with dropping or nidus. But once the lurker is in the enemy base, it is a super strong, so I would say A tier. And next we have the Swarm Host. This one I would also put into A tier. I mean, it's generally considered a weak unit, but it's pretty good at harassing. I mean, number one, it can be very cheap in the long run, because if you buy a couple of Swarm Hosts, they produce free units as long as they stay alive. So it can be a very economically good investment. Buy a couple of Swarm Hosts and harass for the rest of the game. Number two, the Locusts are flying. So it's pretty easy for the Locusts to get close to the enemy mineral line. And the Locusts also have very high damage. They kill workers very quickly and even can take out a main building from time to time. But the reason I still not think it is an A tier is because, number one, the Locusts are pretty slow, both in flying mode and in ground mode. So once the enemy sees the Locusts, it's pretty easy for the workers to pull away, and then the Swarm Host still can target the main building. Also, the Swarm Host is pretty supply heavy, takes 3 supply for a harassment unit, pretty supply heavy, but they're good A tier. And then we have the Broodlord. I would put the Broodlord into D tier because, number one, it is a late game unit, and in the super late game, harassment is just not as powerful as in the early game, you know? So a good harass in the early game can easily win the game, but harassing a little bit in the late game when both players have huge economies is not strong. And also the damage output is very low. It's a slow unit. It takes really a while to fly to the enemy base. It's a D tier. And this one here, the Viper, is also a D tier because none of the spells are useful for harassment. So Abduct, Blinding Cloud, Parasitic Bomb, useless for harassment. And then we have the Atrolisk. I think I would say almost the same as I said about the Broodlord. It's a late game unit. Late game harassment tends to be not as strong as early game harassment. And it has splash damage, that's good. But it is also a super clunky unit, so it often just will get stuck on buildings and stuff. It's really not easy or almost impossible to get an ultra into the enemy mineral line and harass, so this is a D tier. Alright dudes, I hope you liked my harassment tier list, and see you next time.